You're listening to I Love It When, and I'm your host, Mo. I'm a speaker, coach, and connector. You're in the right place if you're looking for some inspiration and you're ready to truly embrace who you are. My intention with this podcast is to help you see that you are so much more powerful than you realize. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of I Love It When. I'm your host, Mo. And today I have the pleasure of introducing you all to a new friend of mine, Maryann Udel. I was interested. I'm all over the place, you guys. Today, I was introduced to Maryann through my friend Kathleen Metcalf, who you may have heard on an earlier episode of the I Love It When podcast. Maryann is amazing, and I can't wait for you all to hear her story today and to learn more about what she does. So I chose to have Maryann on the podcast because she is a life and business coach, and she specializes in helping people with grief and loss. When I work with people one-on-one or in my retreats and workshops, people often joke, oh, Margaret, I don't, if I come back to your retreat again, I got to be prepared to cry. And I always will say to them, I love your tears. Like, I love your tears. I welcome them. It's safe to cry here. And don't be surprised if you see me cry as the leader of the retreat too. It happens quite often. I have always been someone who feels deeply. And I feel like there's very little that anyone could do or that I could do to actually stop that. It's just who I am. And so I've learned to embrace my tears and not be ashamed of them. And I love helping other people do the same. So here's a little bit about Maryann. Maryann Udel is a best-selling author, speaker, and certified life and business coach experienced in managing loss. She guides individuals and businesses through major transitions. She was unexpectedly introduced to the world of grief at the age of 24 when her husband died in an automobile accident. Over the years, she found a way to live, laugh, love, and find joy and thrive. Through her company, Sheltering Tree, she offers one-to-one support, group programs, retreats, and workshops on various topics related to change, loss, and grief. Whether it's working with businesses or with individuals dealing with death, an illness, a divorce, a breakup, or a job loss, she helps them make peace with the past so that they can embrace the promise of their future. In the anthology book, Unleashing Your Soul Level Magic, she shares about her journey in the chapter From Grief to Purpose. And I'll put the link to the book in the comments as well. So in this episode today, we talk about her experience at the age of 24, losing her husband, and how that ultimately led to her becoming an author, speaker, and certified life and business coach. How she helps people in one-to-one settings and groups begin to process their grief. How grief is still not yet a topic that is talked about enough, and how suppressing your feelings and emotions will begin to show up in all sorts of ways within your body. So I'm excited for you all to meet Maryann. Please connect with her after this episode. She is someone that you want to have her contact information. She's a beautiful, beautiful person. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of I Love It When. I'm your host, Mo, and today I'm really excited to introduce you all to a new friend of mine, Maryann Udel. Oh wow, look at that. We podcast team, feel free to leave that in. That was just too hysterical. I was just telling Maryann that I'm on a different computer and occasionally my Zoom decides to turn off my screen. And so I just did that.
Well, they
Oh,
wanted
that's
to bring that
perfect.
spunky photo of you.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So Maryann Udel, for those of you that have been listening to the podcast, you'll know Kathleen Metcalf. Kathleen Metcalf was on the podcast back towards the beginning, and she introduced me to Maryann, and I was so grateful for the introduction because with what Maryann does, it's actually a beautiful kind of counterpart to what I do. And we're going to talk a lot about feelings today and about grief. And but before I say any more, though, I got sidetracked by that. Maryann, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Thank you, Mo. I'm so happy to be here with you. I've been looking forward to this for
Oh,
quite a while. My name's Maryann Udel. I am a grief coach. I work with both individuals and companies who are dealing with loss or major change or grief in their businesses or in their lives. I help them make peace with the past. so they can embrace the promise of their future. And I live in Southern California in the Los Angeles area. I'm a wife and a mother, and originally an East Coaster. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, lived in New York, and my journey to being a coach was long and winding. And I'm sure we'll get into all of that. But
Yes. Uh, I love what you do, and we shared in a brief Zoom call before this. We talked a little bit about what I do with people at retreats and workshops, and how often grief comes up, and how very little people feel comfortable talking about it in their normal day-to-day lives. And so, I just think it's beautiful what you do, and there's so many different ways in which people can work with you.
Mhm.
So, if you would you mind sharing with us how this all started and why you coach with grief?
I started, well, I officially became a coach in 2017.
Mm.
But the reason that I do it goes back a lot farther to when I was 24. I was married about a year out of college, and about a year and a half after that, my husband was killed in an automobile accident. So at the age of 24, I became a widow. I didn't know what to do. I hadn't, there were no, it was, well, first of all, no internet,
Mhm.
no social media. The support groups that were available were for women my grandmother's age.
Mhm.
It was very difficult. And I sort of kicked around in Pennsylvania for a while and in the house that we bought together. And one day I was walking and said, "Ah, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do." And I could hear Bob, my husband, who was dead, but he said, "Go to New York." I, I studied acting in college and sold my house and ventured to do an apprenticeship at a Shakespeare festival in New Jersey, about an hour outside of New York. And that's where I met my current husband eventually, about 3 or 4 years after that. And we will be celebrating our 37th anniversary this year.
Wow.
The acting world was a big part of how I healed. Because when you're studying acting, you need to be in touch with your feelings. You
Mhm.
need to be in touch with what is happening. Because when you act, you want to, you're not lying. You're using a spark of truth to inform who you are as a character. So if someone is not a mother, but they are a motherly figure, they're the ones that people come to for advice, or they always have the band-aid, or they you
Mhm.
know they know where how to help.
Mhm.
They can use that as a mother thing. I've never killed anybody, but if I needed to play a character that had that, I could source a time in my life when I really was so angry with someone that I could have done that. But anyhow, a lot of the work I do is centered around the feelings and the fact that we suppress a lot of it. It
Mhm.
wasn't until 2017 that I became fully certified as a coach. I kept living my life and I had to take a regular job because my current husband was injured and I needed to work so we could pay the bills.
Mhm.
And when they almost laid me off, I thought, uh-oh, I want a little more control. So I
Mhm.
started exploring and I came upon the coaching. And I started thinking I just wanted to help people feel calm.
Mhm.
And the more I dug, the more I realized that the pain that I felt at the age of 24 was the just the space of being so lost and alone. I wanted to be able to guide people through it and let them know that it's possible to learn to live with your grief, that it's not something that you have to get over,
Mhm.
but accept that it's a part of life. And that's how I came to the coaching. Once I got certified as a coach, I got officially laid off. And
Wow.
then a year later, I was back at the company as a coach consultant when they were laying off more people. So my experience helping people through loss, they had me on retainer to help the people that were getting laid off.
Oh, wow.
And
What
then,
a
oh,
valuable resource.
yes, yeah, it was very insightful of them to offer that.
Hmm.
And then also be available for the people who were left behind
Hmm.
because there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of, am I going to get laid off too? Or I have all this work. Who's my boss now?
Hmm.
Um, the company had been sold, so everything was being restructured. So helping individuals and that type of stuff is where I came in to help with the company. And now the majority of my clients are individuals. And I have a couple of groups. I hold regular retreats, and I do workshops for companies, lunch and learns, and if they need some training, or if something has happened within a company and they want to be able to offer some understanding.
Hmm.
Um, Part of the mission that I see within my work is to make grief more of a conversation,
Hmm.
to take away that stigma that people often feel,
Hmm.
because everybody experiences, everyone you see is going through something,
Hmm.
either from the distant past or they're living through right now. There's it there, and because grief is such a personal thing, it's impossible to compare how you're feeling or dealing with something with how someone else is doing. If you see someone else who has been widowed, oh, they're doing fine. What's wrong with me? That there there is no timeline
Hmm.
or proper way to do it.
Hmm.
And for a long time, I thought there was. Uh, I remember a boyfriend in New York telling me I should take down my husband's photo
Oh.
because it had been 3 years and I should put that behind me now.
Hmm.
And I was too naive or innocent. And I thought, oh, maybe he's right. So, but my current husband, Jim, was the first man that wanted to hear more about my experience as a widow. He wanted to know more about Bob. He wanted to know um, how I felt because he knew that that experience made me who I am.
Hmm. Oh,
And
I just got full body chills. It's Jim.
mhm,
Oh, I like Jim already.
yeah, yeah. And on our first date, he did rub my feet. So when you're living
Special
in New
person.
York, a foot rub is a good thing. So yeah,
Wow.
and it was a picnic. So it was rubbing my feet outside. It's
Oh my gosh.
like, it's very
Amazing.
special. Um, yeah.
Wow. So going back to that time when you were 24, because I know there are people who are listening who are going to identify with a number of different things that you say today. I'm
Hmm.
even thinking of someone that I'm currently coaching who's been dealing with the loss of some dogs in her life. That has really, she's realized that she has some grief that she hasn't yet expressed. Was there anything you found during that time when you were in the midst of that beginning of that grief? What prompted you to try and find some way to help? Or did you even know you were looking for that when you just felt like, did you know that acting was going to help you with that?
I didn't. I
Okay.
Before I left Pennsylvania, the things that helped me most in the early days were walking and journaling.
Okay.
There really wasn't anybody. that I could talk with. I was living with my in-laws for a while because I couldn't go back into the house by myself. It was too hard. And then my mom came and stayed with me for a little while I made the transition. And then I just got a waitress job that helped me. And it's interesting because the waitress job I took provided my angel in the form of Claire, who was a career waitress. She was a widow who raised two children on her own, working as a waitress.
What?
So being able to speak with her was that place. Had I not taken a waitress job just to fill my days, um, I never would have met her. And she was very encouraging, very protective. If there were any customers who were being a little fresh, she would scold them. Um, but she was that mama bird that was a wonderful example for me on how you can continue to live.
Mm.
And she was a joyful, she had a laugh. She could make anybody laugh and make anybody feel at home. So it was just recognizing and appreciating how much she provided. And it wasn't until later that I realized how much that helped me.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Was there a
So
particular? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say journaling, walking,
Journaling, walking.
and um, if you're able to find someone to speak with who will, um, not people who try to fix you, because there is no fixing this. It's just being present with what is and
Mm-hmm.
feeling all the feelings. And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard because it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, well, I don't think I'll be able to stop crying.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear that a lot. I said, I know, but try it. The waves come pretty hard, and you're in a tsunami when you first are in the midst of grief. And those early days, you're upside down, you're in a fog, you can't find the ground, but eventually you get your head above water, you get your feet on the ground, the water subsides,
Mm-hmm.
and you're able to breathe and take a step. And then you start developing the tools to what happens when the next wave hits.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do? There's a lot of breathing techniques you can do to help to calm your nervous system. There are ways to sit still, to be in nature, to move your body, to get the endorphins flowing. So
Mm-hmm.
there's um, it's hard when you're in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I remember sitting in the house in my robe in the wintertime eating popcorn. And then I looked outside and I noticed my neighbor had shoveled my walk in my driveway. And I thought,
Oh.
so that got me outside.
Mm-hmm.
So it was looking for the moments of gratitude
Mm-hmm.
or the moments of happiness, even though they might be small. It might be one day just how good your shower feels,
Mm-hmm.
or how wonderful your cup of coffee tastes, or just the smell of it, the sound of it. Just looking for the times when you can appreciate life.
I love that. It just reminds me of how much I talk with people about presence, about being very present.
Right.
Uh, Something else came to my mind as you were describing how you feel and how the waves happen, and to just try and sit with it. Something that my partner said to me once a couple of months ago. We were talking about crying because I've always been a crier, and thankfully I've been around enough people who accepted me for how I was. And I also didn't really like, there was no choice. The tears were coming, things were happening, and I feel my
Right,
feelings.
right.
And my partner said, "Oh, it hurts. It hurts so bad. It feels like I'm actually going to die." And I said, "Wait, what do you mean?" And he said, "The pain in his chest is so poignant that it feels like he might have a heart attack or like he's in the process of dying." And I said, "Wow, well, that makes total sense to me that you would want to avoid that." Thank you for
Right.
telling me that. I've not ever heard that from anybody. And so it would make sense.
While he was crying.
Hmm.
Mm.
And I wonder if you've ever heard that from anyone.
Well, if you continue to suppress your feelings, you can manifest. I mean, there can be body pain.
Yeah.
So it's possible that he's been holding it for such a long time that it just wants to come out.
Hmm.
There's, if he's able to put his hand over his heart and breathe into that and possibly do a loving kindness meditation,
Okay.
that it might start the flow of tears in a more easeful way.
Peaceful way. Okay. Okay. I'll
And
tell him
or
that.
if he's able to write.
He's a writer, so he writes morning pages every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, even write, answering the question, how do I feel today and why? So it's one thing to know, I feel sad. Why?
Hmm.
Well, and then you fill in the blank. But or if you're angry, why am I angry? Why do I feel pissed off today?
Hmm.
Well, before I went to bed, I didn't resolve that argument, so or I didn't sleep well, or
Yeah.
so it gets you more in touch with the feelings that you do have. So when the um, the grief stuff starts popping up again, you start, oh, I've had 3 really good days and now I'm feeling bad. So you're more aware of, okay, it's not as bad as it was last week.
Hmm.
And it just, where do I feel it in my body?
Hmm.
And how can I breathe into that part
Hmm.
and just notice what happens?
That's perfect. I'll tell him that. He also does a lot of work with it's called qigong. Qigong when you yeah. And so he's gotten really good at moving things, but when he shared that, I was like, what a whole different perspective. I've never heard a man either tell me like what that actually feels like in your body. So no wonder you'd want to avoid that feeling.
Well, it's possible that other men have felt it, they just don't speak about it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And that's a
Wow.
hard thing because there's the whole stigma of not allowing emotions.
Hmm.
I think it's less likely with younger generations, but definitely along my generation.
Hmm.
Mm-mm. Even
Hmm.
when we were kids, we were, quit your crying or I'll give you something to cry about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although I'm like you, I'm one of those that was the crier. Whenever I get together with my family, everybody has a bet how long it'll take before I start crying.
Wow. Yeah.
I
I
mean,
always
I,
tell
I,
people, yeah, don't be surprised if I cried during one of my own retreats. Like
oh yeah,
people always joke and are real about the fact that most people will cry when they come to one of my events. And I just tell them like, hey, don't be afraid of that. You might see me cry because
yeah,
it's just having a chance to express those things is so important and it feels so
yes,
good afterwards.
right. Well,
Yes.
someone described, if you shift your thinking about what crying is, if you think
Mm.
of it as a shower for your inside.
Ooh, I like that.
hmm
Yeah.
uh, it's like the how the air feels after a thunderstorm.
Hmm.
Everything smells so fresh and clear, and then you physically feel spent
Yes.
after a
Yeah.
big cry.
I can always sleep so well that night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
I'm glad I'm not the only one. It's good to hear that. Yeah.
yes. Yeah. Well, and you're talking about crying at retreats. One of the things that I did for my business was to have little packets of tissue with my company name on it. So
Yeah.
that's my, everybody at the retreat gets one of those.
That's a perfect swag bag gift. Yes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So when did you notice that you started to feel, I don't want to say like yourself again, or maybe you felt like a new version of yourself? Like did my friend Anne is a therapist. She's also does past life readings, and I've had her on the podcast before. And she shared recently on her podcast, she's doing a series called Epoxy, where she's having people share little joys of those in between moments. And
Mhm.
she shared about after her brother died, I think it was about 4 or 5 years, where she felt like she could all of a sudden see colors again and things were bright and things were like came back to life in a way. Do you feel like that's what happened for you, or what was that like when you start to
Mm,
feel some relief or a change?
well, I think with me, the experience was more internal,
Okay.
um, that it was more being able to breathe. You know, I think there's different levels. There's different, when you're dealing with grief, it's, you're going up a spiral. So there are different things that you experience, but with greater understanding.
Okay.
So you're learning more and deeper about yourself. The first time I felt some relief was when I decided that I would be leaving Pennsylvania, that I would start applying for apprenticeships at a theater. That was the first time I remembered, oh, this feels right. And then talking to a realtor about selling the house, getting accepted as an apprentice, and packing my car and driving to New Jersey to do this. I was like,
Mm.
if it, to think of that now, I think, holy crap, at 24 to do that and then to show
Yeah.
up in this strange new place. I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
And um, it was an up and down summer, learning to live on my own in a whole new place. And so I think there were just stages along the way. And then right before I met Jim, I had made the decision just to focus on myself. I was too concerned about finding a boyfriend
Mm.
that I felt a little uncertain. And then I said, I don't, what do I need that for? And as soon as I focused totally on myself, is when I met Jim.
Funny how that happens. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
I think that that's part of just finding that ease with yourself. And there were a lot of ups and downs even after that. You know, finding my place in the relationship, getting comfortable when we got married. I would thought I was cheating on Bob by even thinking about getting married, and then having a child and moving. And um, Bob's parents came to my wedding,
Wow.
and I I was so touched by that because they remained part of my life until they died, and I'm still in touch with his siblings.
Mm.
So it's I didn't lose them um, when he died.
Mm. That's
All-
beautiful.
So to answer your question, you know, I think it's just there isn't a definite time where I can say, "Oh, I'm all better."
Mm.
I still feel a little bit of blue, low feeling in the month of September, which is the
Mm.
month he died.
Mm.
So it's something your body doesn't forget.
Mm. Mm.
So it's things feel more normal, but I know that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it had not been for that.
Mm. Is there a way that Bob shows up for you in your world? Like, is there a sign that he has that where he comes through? Yeah.
Um, just the sound of birds chirping. So
Mm.
he's around a lot. And I will sometimes when I'm walking, I will talk to him, and um, then a bird will chirp, and I think, okay, all right, I'm being ridiculous. I know, okay. Mm,
I love
yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Would you talk a little bit more too about the different ways in which people can work with you, one on one versus group programs or retreats and workshops? What do you find that people are most pulled to first?
I think people want one-on-one first
Mm-hmm.
because there's something about talking in front of other people.
Mm-hmm.
There's something, even though the group format is very supportive and everybody there is dealing with something, I think that there's, because of the taboo around talking about grief, there's an uncomfortableness in feeling broken
Mm-hmm.
or something's wrong with me. Or some people are so fully affected by hearing other people's stuff. They don't want to go to a support group because they don't want to listen to everybody else's things. It just makes them feel worse.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's not how a group program goes. There's one on one. I guide people through feeling the feelings, getting in touch with what the reality is, setting new new goals for the future, adjusting whatever the plan was, and then gently figuring out a plan of action for how to move forward. Most people work with me when it's been 6 months or more since the event happened. I had one client who came to me, I think it was 50 years after the fact.
Wow.
She was crying all the time and she said, I don't know what to do. Her father had died when she was 13 and she didn't get to go to his funeral. She was told to be strong for her mother and take care of her little brother. So everybody was concerned about the young widow, but the kids didn't get the support they needed.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that feeling you were talking about, anything suppressed, it comes up sooner or later.
Mm-hmm.
It took a long time. Um, but after a year of working together, she was able to smile a lot more. And now she's one of the most delightful people that I know.
Oh.
Very charming. And it took more than 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
uh, I don't, so that would be the sort of one-on-one work. And it can
Okay.
be, generally, it's at least 6 months
Okay.
that I'll work with someone. And then if they want to be part of a group, there are a couple of different groups. One is called Recharge Your Life. I go through those steps that I just described with in a group teaching, and then Q&A and accountability. The and then there's a 1 year program called Reclaim Your Life. So after somebody has gone through Recharge Your Life, they have the basics of how to move forward. But to be able to continue to grow and evolve and be held accountable,
Mm-hmm.
it's more of a mastermind where people who've gone through one of the other, either working one on one or the shorter program, they would then come and be part of the 12 month.
Okay.
And then a retreat anybody can go to. It's a self contained, and uh, the latest one I've been doing is called Elevate. So or Elevate Your Life, where you're making peace with the past, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be, it can be something that you're upset about, or even just making peace with the past year,
Yeah.
saying goodbye to it and really being present today. And from where you are today, determine, what can I do now? I wish I could go back to that, but I can't. What can I do? and then make plans from there. Like I could have said back in Pennsylvania, what do I want? Or, well, I want to still have Bob, but that can't happen. So
Mhm.
what can I do? And that's sort of the thinking that got me to figure out, well, I don't have to stay here. I can act. Oh, I can do that. And then once you find something and know why you want to do it, I think people think of things they should do
Mhm.
or the way they should behave. And part of the guidance that I do with my coaching is, what do you want and why?
Mhm.
It's that why thing. It's like I was talking about with how do you feel and why. Knowing why something is happening or why you want to do it, you have a greater purpose. The reason I do my business is because I don't want people to be stuck the way I was. I want the world to be more uh, open about grief. We need to talk about it. We need to
Mhm.
help each other. And until we remove the stigma and a lot of the misconceptions about it,
Mhm.
we'll just be stuck. Everybody will be in their little scared hole.
Mhm.
And I think during COVID, there was a lot more discussion that people started opening up and acknowledging we're all grieving. Our
Mhm.
lifestyle is totally upside down.
Mhm.
There was the loss of human connection.
Yeah.
There was a closeness with family members, which was good. But I miss being able to do this. I miss being able to do that. People losing their jobs, their businesses,
Mhm.
their sense of joy. So mental health awareness rose. But now that people are doing a little bit more in person again, a
Mhm.
lot more, I think that some of that has been forgotten or pushed aside.
Mhm.
Uh, and I just want to make sure that people are still talking about grief and knowing
Yeah.
that not anything they did wrong, it's not a
Mhm.
punishment. It's how humans are supposed to feel.
Well, you led right into a question I had just written down to make sure not to forget to ask you. And you've talked about this a little bit already, but why is grief not talked about? Or what are some of the things that have come up for you in doing this work that you found that why people avoid it or why it's not viewed as okay to talk about?
Well, I think one, it hurts,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a misunderstanding about um, what the actual experience is. It's a basic human reaction to loss,
Mm-hmm.
any kind of loss. And people think that, well, I do these 5 stages and then I should be done. I should be all better. I did these 5 stages. I don't know which stage I'm in right now, but there are no stages. When Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote about the 5 stages, she was observing people who were in the process of dying.
Mm-hmm.
It was their journey towards death and these stages they were going through. It's not the experience that people feel after someone has died or
Mm-hmm.
when you're experiencing a loss. Although all of those things are possible feelings you could have. And there is no checklist and you're done. The whole process with grief is learning how to live with it.
Mm-hmm.
And people want to be done with it. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that, well, if I don't feel it, then I'll be all better. If I just avoid it. And as I said, not feeling it doesn't mean it goes away. It could be 50 years and you can't stop crying.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what's going on. Another client of mine had a whole host of medical issues. She had stomach issues and pain in her her arms and her throat. She was always getting laryngitis because she didn't speak about it. Um, she was holding everything inside. So she was eating her grief, or just staying and causing all of these digestive issues. Um, I don't want to go into that part of thing, but I think that fear is probably what prevents people from talking about it more, and
Mm-hmm.
because it's not a topic of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And people mistakenly try to offer platitudes to think they're fixing or helping in some way. And that's really probably one of the most hurtful things you can say to someone who is dealing with pain. They're in a better place, or they're out of their pain. The best thing that someone can do if they're with someone who's grieving is to just be with them
Mm-hmm.
and hold them and just let them cry.
Yeah.
I said, there are no words to stop the pain. All you can do is say, I can't even imagine how you feel. I'm here to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Or just,
You're you're reminding me of something else that people have told me before when they're having a hard time, because I will often ask people pretty directly if I feel like they're in a space where they want to talk about it. I'll ask them about whatever might have happened, and they've most people have said, "Oh, I really appreciate you just asking me about it and being willing to talk about it. It's so
Mhm.
nice." But I have had people say, "I don't want to be a burden to you. I don't want to be a burden." This has come up in the last couple months, in fact, and I'm like, "It is not a burden that you're placing on me. I'm not carrying your grief for you. I'm sitting with you in it for a minute, but I'm not going to be the one to carry it." So I've noticed that's also something, is their fear of
Yeah.
being a burden.
Well, that's a good point. I think it's just, ah, you don't want to make anybody else feel bad,
Mm-hmm.
I think is a big part of it. That I feel bad. I don't want anyone else to feel bad, or I don't want pity. There
Yeah.
is that because, oh, you poor dear, you know. I
Yeah.
said, all right, already. But I think it's just because there isn't enough discussion about it,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's normal
Mm-hmm.
and we all feel it.
Hey, I'm popping in for a moment to let you know that if you're interested in working with me one on one in a small group, or you'd like to attend one of my upcoming retreats, please reach out or add yourself to my email list. You can go to iloveitwhen.org and scroll to the bottom where you'll see there's a spot to sign up. I also love to speak, teach, and create experiences for small, medium, or large size companies. If you know someone that I should know, please connect us. I'm looking to utilize I Love It When to create global change, and that will require collaborating with all of you. You're all so much more powerful than you realize. Remind yourself of that today. I wanted to make sure too to I think I have a variety of people that listen to this podcast. Some are listening for some of the personal development life stuff. Other people work in corporations. And one of the things we talked about the last time is, and what you mentioned even at the beginning of the episode, is how you've worked for companies to help them
Hmm.
through a term that I learned because I wasn't in corporate for very long, is change
Hmm.
management training. And that's what was coming to mind as you were talking earlier. And I know you want to do more of that.
Hmm.
Um, I guess, is there anything else you want to add around how you can help people who are listening who work for larger companies and maybe don't have access to something like this yet? How could they
Well,
help you
mhm.
get in to help other people?
Well, there's several ways. I think if a company is going through a merger and acquisition, there's a lot of uncertainty. And, the change management part comes when everything is in upheaval. And quite often there's support around the systems and the business part of it, but the
Mm-hmm.
people don't always get the attention they need. And that's where I am most helpful. I've been on retainer for companies to have open office hours because there's something about the employee assistance program that doesn't quite fill that gap,
Mm-hmm.
that you have to wait to get an appointment. You only get three of them. And but knowing there's no explanation necessary. I know why they're coming. And maybe there's something personal that's going on and they have no one to talk to about it. Something's going on in their personal life and they don't know what to do. When I was with another company, there was a woman who had to deal with a domestic violence issue. So I was able to guide her to the resources she needed. Someone else was uh, in potentially going to be unhoused, and I offered some thoughtful suggestions on where she could look, and she said, "Oh yes, I can do that." Okay, so it's just being that resource to help do life coaching
Hmm.
sometimes, and just make, because when people are taken care of, they can do their job better.
Hmm.
It's to benefit the company.
Hmm.
And they don't have to worry about lawsuits. They don't have to worry about people going psycho or postal.
Hmm.
Um, it's a much more human way to make a transition.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love also that there's just so many different ways in which your services and what you do can be utilized. I mean,
Mhm.
in the ways that we're, since we've just been talking, I'm thinking about all these different ways in which grief and loss comes up on a regular basis.
Yes, and I think that's
Yeah.
another thing. People don't realize it's not just when somebody dies. You get laid
No.
off, you get a divorce, you get
Yes.
a breakup, your pet dies,
Mm-hmm.
you move across the country,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you lose your lifestyle.
Oh yeah. I'm even thinking in the way for me that what's been coming up is the way in which I've lost different relationships over my life. Like I've changed.
Mhm.
Especially that's been the hardest one is when nothing physical is removed necessarily, but like something changes and you're a different person and some people don't like that. And so even that loss is has
Yeah.
been difficult. Yeah.
So it's just taking the time to acknowledge that. And that's where asking yourself that question, how am I feeling today?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Oh, yeah, that person isn't there to text or or they don't understand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it just gives you that space to explore and be
Mm-hmm.
curious about what is really happening within you.
I love that. Is this a lot of the same content that you've been sharing? Is this also what's in your book, Unleashing Your Soul Level Magic? I love the title of it, by the way.
Thank you. It's actually part of an anthology that I wrote a chapter for. My particular chapter is From Grief to Purpose. So
Okay.
I do discuss why I do what I do, the
Mm-hmm.
experience of being widowed at the age of 24 and then meeting Jim and flashing forward to why I developed my company. And I talk a little bit about the work that I do and the process that I follow. So that is in the book. And there are a lot of beautiful stories about women that did go through different types of transitions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that is what that, and you can get that on Amazon.
Love it. Okay, cool.
Yes, thanks for asking.
Yeah. Well, I was also just thinking too, do you have any future plans or visions of things that you want to create around this work that you'd be willing to share with us? Or is there just something that you've been kicking around an idea of doing that?
I mean, as far as the next step with my work,
Yeah.
oh, I'm looking for speaking opportunities
Okay.
wherever. So if anyone knows of any place that could use a speaker, if a conference about change, if it's
Mm-hmm.
a mental health conference,
Mm-hmm.
if it's something to do with HR, because that's typically who engages me in
Mm-hmm.
any sort of work, or any organization that just wants to learn more about grief.
Okay. I'm definitely going to keep my eyes and ears peeled.
Or podcast interviews like this.
Okay, definitely. Yeah, no, I think like you've said a couple different times, it's a really important topic that needs to be talked about more. And so I think opening that up is just it I don't think people realize too that it doesn't take a whole lot to create a ripple effect. I think people feel like sometimes that mountain is so huge, they're how could they even begin to approach it? But just us having this conversation, someone could listen and it could change their perspective and or get them to a place where they're actually ready to talk to someone. And
Yeah,
so yeah, I think it's really important work that you're doing.
thank
And
you.
I'm excited to find ways to incorporate more of what you're doing with who I work with as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, one of the last things I want to ask you about today, because I always ask usually every guest, is a little bit about your intuition and how your intuition has played a part in what you do. Do
Mm.
you have any examples of how you utilize your intuition with your work?
Well, I think it's a primary thing that I pay attention to when I'm working. I can usually sense when someone is going through some pain. And I think one of my superpowers is just that immediate trust that people feel when they talk with me.
Mm.
And there's just this opening up. I just know that something's going on. Are you okay? No. And then um, that's, I think, a lot of the work that I do, I follow my intuition when I'm with a client.
Mm.
I don't have hard and fast, this is what you have to do right now. If they're not ready to do that, I do follow my intuition there. And it's a feeling thing.
Okay.
It's not something that I know in my body how it feels.
Mm.
This is not the right question. I know they need this right now.
Mm. I love that. I love talking to people about getting back into their body and feeling the feelings that come from your body to sending you messages all the time.
Yeah. And then even just reaching out to Kathleen to speak with her a little more because we were in a business group together. And I said, I want to get to know her better. And
Yeah.
following that intuition, and she led me to you. So,
Yes, I love it when those things happen. That is, yeah,
yes.
that's exactly how I met Kathleen as well, either, too. So funny.
Hmm.
Well, cool. Well, my last question for the day is what's your current I love it when for the world or for yourself right now?
I love it when I see that spark in a client's eyes, when they go from the darkness to the light, when they see the hope.
Mm-hmm. That is the best moment. Yes. And
Mhm.
if somebody's listening today and they want to have a meeting with you, what's the best way for them to reach out and contact you?
If you go to my website, yourshelteringtree.com, there is a link on there to schedule a call. I do a complimentary call with anyone who is considering working with me, corporate or individual.
Love it.
Um,
Okay.
that's the best way to reach me.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today and for sharing everything that you shared.
Thank you, Mo. I am so delighted. It was a joy to be able to spend this time with you. Thank you.
Thank you.